Okay, welcome back, guys. Another round of great layouts from down here in Australia. I'll just like to mention the door prize that we've got running at the moment. So if you watch the slides in between clinics, it'll tell you how to enter them, but it's as simple as posting a post to Facebook or Instagram, hashtag NMRAX, and you'll be in with a chance to win a $50 gift voucher from Mini Prints. So, Martin, over to you to introduce our next clinician.
Not a problem. Well, we're strapping ourselves back in the DeLorean, and we're heading back in time. It's 10 p.m. Saturday night here in Australia, and we're going all the way back to 8 a.m. Saturday morning. And we're up in Canada with Lloyd here. Lloyd Hennessy. Yeah, I've seen Lloyd's work around the place for a while now, and the one thing that always gets me about Lloyd is his interiors. Every building he's got has got some spectacular interiors, whether they're industry or whether it's a shop front or whether it's just someone's lounge room. But anyway, I guess we're going to see a bit of that later on. So, Lloyd, how long have you been in the model railroading game?
It's going to be 5 years in November.
5 years in November. So you'd what some of the people would say is this would be your first layout that you've built?
Honestly, no, it's my second. The first one lasted, I'd say about 6 months before I tore it all down. Somebody had told me that, somebody asked me, what are your expectations of a model railroad? And I told him, well, to bring cars from here to there and from there to there. And he goes, then? I go, then bring them back. So he goes, maybe you need some help. So I got help from him, and it was a go.
Oh, excellent. So I understand you've got some PowerPoint slides, and you got a bit of a talk on your layout and the design behind it. And we've got a bit of a video to run then. And
yes.
And then hopefully we'll be fending off all the questions in the chat. So I'll stop rambling on, and I'll hand the stage over to you, and we'll make this screen full size.
Oh, no.
And it's over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Just to put everything in a context, I've never had a train when I was a kid. Never been on a train except when I was 2 years old. Like I said, never been around trains. Don't know anybody who has trains. And 6 years ago, I bought this house, and I didn't have any furniture for the basement. So I looked at my wife and I said, well, maybe I should start my retirement and do some model railroading. Like I said, I didn't know anything about railroading. So what did help was forums, the internet, videos, pictures, and for maybe 4 months before starting, I did a lot of research. So let's get on with the PowerPoint presentation. So yes, my railroad name is MHO Junction. It stands for, the H stands for Hawkesbury, being the junction between Montreal and Ottawa. It's totally freelance, because then I didn't know much about, like I said, about trains, so freelance. This was my first layout that lasted about 6 months. I thought I could reach 30 inches one side, 30 inches on the other side, and sure, why not build 6 feet wide layout, until I found that there was a lot of problems. I couldn't reach the mountains on the left-hand side, so I had to build them somewhere else. And that's when I decided, okay, I'll take it down. And there's a person by the name of Bill, the track planner, that contacted me and asked me if I needed help. So I said, sure, go ahead. So I gave him the criteria that my basement was 40 feet by 20 feet, L shape. I wanted double main line. I wanted it operational and as much industries as possible. And my perception is what I knew is I wanted Canadian Pacific, 1970s era, and I wanted all 4 seasons. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but that's what I wanted. So this is what Build a Track Planner proposed as a layout. Now, there's been probably 3 changes during the first 3 years. For example, on the left-hand side, what you see is a yard. But before that, it was intermodal. And I found out that in the early 70s, there was no intermodal the way we have it today. So it got changed to a yard. Also, there was supposed to be 1 main line going down the helix. Then I wanted 2 main lines because I wanted 2 exits from the helix. I'll explain to you later my brewery. Also, there's a track at the top on the side of the stairs. It's a black line going down. That track goes into my workshop. This is the staging. It's a 7-track, 2, 4, 6, yeah, it's a 7-track staging with a reverse loop and a siding. So work started on November 2015. So it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be 5 years in November. And on November 2016, a year later, my entire bench work was done. All my tracks were laid, and my office was done. Well, my bench work, my working area. So from there, Marty, you switch to the video.
Okay, we'll switch to the video now. I'll get that up and hit run, so that should be going.
So let's start with my staging is totally scratch built. It is all done with foam core, and it also has a wooden backing holding all this up. The paper, the brickwork, the brickwork is 3D, so not 3D, but embossed paper, which comes from Greece. The texture is unbelievable, where you could almost feel the bricks, the separations between the bricks. Basically, this idea came from this picture, and since all my scenery has a little story behind it, the story behind this one is that the city of Hawkesbury bought this old CP storage facility, and they are now using it for train tours. And this building will be used to store the steam locomotive, which is going to be my Royal Hudson Rapido. And there's another 2 doors, and those are for the passenger cars. So those will be used only once a week. The next building is a train station. Most of you probably know this train station from Walters. I built this kit about 4 years ago, and I've put it aside. And now that it was time to put on the layout, I dropped it and broke it in lots of pieces. So I decided to redo it from scratch instead of gluing all the little pieces together. So from scratch, all made out of wood. And of course, I kept the windows and I kept the roof, which I changed the looks of it. As we leave Hawkesbury train station, we're heading towards the town of Hawkesbury. Here we have a siding for the passenger cars, and now we're entering the town of Hawkesbury. So the entire town was built with DPM buildings. I think I've got about 18 of them. And I also have a scratch building which enters my bench work. As you can see, I'm pretty much done with this, with the town. Every building has an interior furniture or people inside it, because the buildings are only about 18 inches away from the edge of the layout. So you're able to see everything that's inside, and all my buildings have lights in it. So this is the building that leads to my bench work. And the next building is my boxcar distribution center. So let's take a look at a few of the buildings. First one is a Tim Horton donut shop, and beside it is Goldfinger Jewelry. The next one is my Pizza. Then we have a bookstore. We have a bank, the Bank of Montreal. We have Canadian Tire. This was done with Roomettes. They make beautiful kits, easy to do, and it doesn't take that long. Then I did Marks and Spencer's. I did Barbershop, and yes, I even made the chairs. My next building is scratch built. It is a backdrop building, and like I said, this feeds into my workbench. So what I intended to do was, during operation, one of the operators will drop 5 cars into that building, and I'll have about a week or a month to work on 5 cars, making sure the wheels are okay, couplers, do the weathering. Basically, it's to get all my cars up to par for my layout and all ready to run with no problems. The next one, my boxcar distribution center, was my first scratch built. It's totally scratch built, again with foam core and embossed paper. Even the roof was done with foam core and a string to make it look like a metal roof. So basically we'll bring in cars, they exchange freight, and also bring the freights inside the building for the trucks to pick up their loads. Now we're leaving Hawkesbury and we are going towards St. Eugene. On the left hand side there's a wood mill, which is basically my backdrop, and since I had a little corner and I didn't know what to put, so I had an extra building which is just there to add to the backdrop. And as we continue, we then arrive at the lumberyard, which is called Elwood Woods Lumberyard. At the end of the lumberyard, we have a swing gate, which I'll explain. At Elwood Woods Lumberyard, it's very busy, day and night. To be able to build that, I use, if I'm not wrong, it's Walters kit. I use 1.5 Walters kit, and put some lights in, plenty of lumber, and figurines, cars, trucks. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but the first part of the video, we were in early autumn. Now we're in late autumn. So we're getting less leaves on trees. And as we go along, we're going to hit winter very soon. As we leave the lumberyard, we're going to cross over the 417, which is a highway that leads from Montreal to Ottawa. To do the highway, I used AK asphalt, which I fell in love with because the texture is exactly what I was looking for. And the bridge was done with the salt method to get the rust. And the piers were scratch built, again with the embossed paper glued to a piece of wood. As we cross over Highway 417, we arrive at Jag's Outdoor Furniture. Some of you might recognize the building as being the feed mill. At this point, this is where I'm at on the build of my layout. Like I said, this Jag building is an old feed mill building. It was plastic, and I managed to make it look like wood, all done with pan pastel, and of course a coat of primer before. And since it's autumn, of course I had to put little pumpkins on the platforms. As we leave Jag's Outdoor Furniture, at the bottom there's going to be a lake, and then we arrive at Chute à Blondeau, which is basically falls. Since I wanted to build a covered bridge, this was the place to have it. I did an entire video on how I build that bridge, and if I'm not wrong, it was the second or third scratch build that I did on this layout. And as we go along, where you see the backdrop end, this is where the transition to winter will start. Now we're entering the winter scene in St. Eugene. What you see on your right is the St. Eugene yard. At first I had an intermodal there, but realized that in the early 70s it did not exist. We're also going to have an RDC running from St. Eugene to Hawkesbury. This is the platform. We're also going to have a skating rink, a church, a garage, and a few houses. I've also tried, I guess, a diorama of a winter scene, and this is what it looked like. This was built during one of our shows on Model Railroading Live. It was the build show. We were to build a hydrocal building, and that's the one I had picked because I didn't have a place to put it, but I did find a place. And then, so since I like building stuff that doesn't look like the box cover, I got a plastic kit from Walters, and I scratch built out of wood the top part of a feed mill. Then I had the snow, the fence, and I even have 2 hobos inside warming up over a barrel of fire, which is done with a orange and yellow LED light flashing. So as we leave St. Eugene, the first building we encounter is the flour mill, which was built about 2-3 years ago, the same way as my other building, with embossed paper to represent the bricks between the cement walls. As we leave, again, St. Eugene, we go around the bend, and this is where the transition to spring becomes. So we go around the bend, and I have a few industries such as the cement plant, propane, the refinery, and a sand industry. The first one here is a cement factory. And this industry was built with 6 different kits, a bit like a kit bashing, I guess. Then I have my propane area, and it happens that it fits very well with my propane cars. They're both Liquid Air, which is a company in Canada. And then you've got my refinery, which is Petro-Canada. I did want a good refinery complex. So again, the refinery is built from, if I'm not wrong, and this one was 5 different kits. And as we go along, we come to the sand factory. This one was pretty much done as per the cover of the box. I didn't want to go into much detail, not knowing exactly how I could really come out with something out of the ordinary. So as we go around the corner, still in spring, we have, I guess you all recognized it, the Vulcan Manufacturing. I still don't know what I'm going to do. What I would like to do is have a fence open up with an Arduino system. But again, that's in the works, so we'll see later. And as we continue, we'll hit the mining industry. And for now, that's how it is. It'll take a while before I start working on that part of the layout. Then we go into a tunnel, and when we come out, we are now summertime. So this entire section is summer. As we come out, we have a paper mill, but I still don't know what that entire section will look like. I know that I intend to have a farming, like a little farm scene. Then we have the co-op with 2 tracks, one for departure and one for arrival. As per the plan, there was no gorge here, but I decided to build a gorge. And the reason for that is I wanted to have a trestle on my layout, just to have something different. And I'll have water flowing from the left, splitting into 2, and coming to a lake at the bottom. Here I have my CP workshop. This was the first area that I completed the scenery. So I installed a bunch of tools inside, machinery, but unfortunately we can't really see it unless it's nighttime and the lights are on. Then you can see the inside of the building. The boxcar that's hanging, there's going to be a figurine under, and it's going to be soldering. So I've got an Arduino that's feeding 3 LED lights, blue, white, and red. So the blue and white flash, and once it stops, the red light goes on for a glow. And the same thing happens inside the building in one of the corners. So there's 2 welding scenes going on with this building. So as we go along, there's a track at the top. That's to feed an industry. But as we go along, as you can see, the cliffs are done with the ceiling tiles, and then we enter the tunnel to go towards Montreal. So we came out from the west and going east back to Montreal. I also have an extra track if I want to do a run around. So if we look at the top track, it's going to go to one of the biggest industries that I've seen so far. It's going to be a brewery, and that brewery will measure about 8 feet by 8 feet, and I think it's 9 feet diagonally. So this is what it's going to look like. You've got arrival track, departure track, and 6 tracks going inside the building, and an extra track for the switcher. This is going to keep the operator very busy. So that's it for my layout. Just one more thing is the lighting I use for my layout is an LED strip, but it's the one that you plug into a 110 volt. It's 160 feet long, so I didn't have to bother connecting every single 15 feet strip. So this I like much better. So I've got 2 of them, a white one and an RGB one. So I would like to conclude this presentation of my layout with just a short video of a run around, and then I guess I can take questions. Thank you.
Okay, so the video's run. There's some great work there. I hadn't seen a few of those parts of your layout anyway. Lloyd, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to make one correction, but I think we didn't have sound. Is that big building that's 5 feet long against the wall? In the video, I mentioned it was N-Scale Engineering, but it's N-Scale Architect. Yeah, so as you can see, some of my buildings are, like I said, they're all freelance. And the fact that I've studied civil engineering, it did help a lot, which is a passion of mine to do that kind of stuff. So besides that, like I said, that project is a 10-year project. I hope it ends at one point. So I've got another 5 years to go. And my goal was to have operations by November to celebrate like 5 years. I was going to have my first operation session. But with being in confinement still, we'll wait. It's no problem. I still have stuff to do.
Like I said,
Plenty
some of the interiors that you've done for buildings are spectacular.
Well, that's well, I gotta say those buildings are I think they're 18 inches from the edge, so you can see inside those buildings. So what I did, especially for the top part of the buildings, just put drapes in. It just gives it a finish. And most of my buildings also have not weird names, but like I've got a pet shop, which I call the Pet Shop Boys. So if you look in the 1970s, the Pet Shop Boys, the group, did not exist. So they stole the name from my pet shop. Things like that. Or like that big building, it's got Woolworth, and beside it, it's called Cottonworth. So play on words.
Okay, well, I'll let Brad take over because I've been looking at the chat here and it's been going nuts. So we've got I think there's a few questions in there to go through. So
Yeah, you're right. It's hard, so I hope I get them all. First one is Pat asked, "How do you model your snow?"
I just wait till it snows outside and just no. The base is plaster, and then I use the snow paste from Woodland Scenics and the snow from Woodland Scenics. There's not much trial and error. It's one thing, but I guess I'll find out more when I do the entire section.
Yeah, okay.
But it's mainly paste and snow from Woodland Scenics.
Yeah, nice. It was a great concept to have all 4 seasons there in the one layout. I see there's a cheeky fella by the name of Gordon that states, or he thought that Canada only had 2 seasons, but I think that's quite cheeky based on, I believe he's only in a country that has 1 season.
Yeah, we have winter and spring. Winter and spring is not what we have, but sometimes we do have summer.
Stephen asked, "What do you use for your trees on your layout?"
I haven't done any trees yet, except for that part of the CP workshop. Where it's autumn and winter, if you've seen, I think it's Mike Capone. If you've seen his layout, his tree, that's what I want. That gave me the inspiration of my autumn and winter. And I've asked him twice already where he gets his trees, and he still doesn't know. So I'm gonna have to look around for those type of trees. But what you've seen was just a backdrop, so I don't have trees yet.
Okay. Just while we're on backdrops, Mark asked for a quick rundown on how you do your backdrops.
Photoshop is, for me, I've used Photoshop before, so I was able to do, okay, first of all, I would search the internet for high resolution pictures. Once I found something I wanted, I dealt with a company called, I think it's Train Junkies, with one of the persons there, and we worked together to do all my backdrops. But I was very demanding in the sense that this is what I want. This is the picture I've got. I want you to add a street at exactly, I don't know, 24 inches. This is the middle of the street. The street has to be 4 inches. So I gave him all the information that I wanted on my backdrop. We did some Photoshop and then sent it to him, and he finished it up. So if you, like for example, my town has 2 streets perpendicular to my main street. I've got a dirt road on another backdrop, the river, the backdrop. So yeah, Photoshop and just search the internet for high resolution pictures.
Yeah, okay. They definitely did look great. There's a few questions in the chats there about what type of LEDs you're using for lighting on there.
Well, the lighting, Marty knows that when it comes to electronics and electricity, I'm terrible at that. If I can just get something and plug it into the wall and it works, that's what I want. So when I looked at, when I was doing my Valence, I was looking at LEDs, and they all come in strips of 5 meters or 15 feet. And since I had about 170 feet to do, that was a lot of splicing, and I didn't want that. And I found on the internet this roll that's 160 feet long. It's a plug and play. You just plug it into a socket, and that's it. It's 110 volts. So you can't really splice it. I think Gert tried something. I don't know if it worked out, but the only bad thing about it is that you cannot go around a bend sideways. Like having it sideways, you can't bend it sideways. You have to flip it on its side. But most of my layout that goes into a peninsula, there's not much stuff there. Like for example, the transition between winter and spring, I think it's like 10 inches wide. So I don't need extra light there.
Yeah.
But the rest is, and I've got 2 LEDs, 2 sets of strip. One is RGB and the other one is white, because not only do I want 4 seasons, but I also want morning, night, like a blue light for night, white during the day, and yellow for sunset and sunrise, which I intend to hook up some way. Yeah, so it's LED.
So those white LEDs, the strip, just the white ones, are they daylight, bright white, or warm white?
They're bright white.
Okay, nice.
Just as a side note, I had a friend that came by, and he had I think it was 4 strips of LEDs, and when we compared my 1 strip to his 4 strip, I had more light. There was more luminescent.
Mm-hmm.
So I saved that way also.
Based on, James asked here, what's the size of your layout? Now, based on you're saying you've got 160 feet of LED strip light, I'm assuming it's quite big.
My layout is 40 feet by 20 feet in L shape. And I've got 1,300 feet of track. It's HO, by the way. Yeah, so I've got about 100 turnouts. The fact that it's a double main line. The reason for, the reason for the double main line is when I told Bill, the track planner, I wanted a passenger train that would run around and just give headaches to the operators. So that should work.
Okay. While we're on the operators, Gordy has asked how many operators do you plan for your layout, or is your layout planned around how many operators have you planned for your layout in an operation session?
I was told that I would need 6 or 7 operators. If it's teams of 2, well, we're talking about 12 or 14, but forget it. I can't fit that many people in my basement. And I would like to have a dispatcher, maybe much later, because I intend to run with GMRI. So basically, I would need just one operator at my brewery, one operator in the small yard, the St. Eugene yard, 1 or 2 operators, or let's say one operator in my Hawkesbury yard. One operator, all he does is passenger train, RDC, and another passenger train. So that would be his only operations. Then I'd probably have 2 more doing deliveries and pickups.
Okay. That sort of, you lightly touched on a question Bernard asked, is your operations, are they going to be switch list, JMRI ops, or car cards?
It's probably going to be GMRI. Like I said, I don't know much about trains or operations, but I've been to 3 layouts, and they all work with GMRI. So of course, that's, for me, that was easy to kind of learn. If we go to switch lists, I think I've done 1 switch list, and cards I've never done. So I'll try to go with the easiest, which for me would probably be GMRI. Just print the next jobs, and that's what we're going to do. But again, I'm still in the learning process. I'm still learning the names, everything that goes with model railroading.
Okay. That's about all I can quickly see here on Facebook. How's the YouTube one looking, Martin?
Oh, there's a couple over here. There was one that come from Bernie, and he was asking, what track power system do you use, and what considerations led you to use it? So you'll run DCC, don't you, Lloyd?
Yes, I do. I've got the NCE. I've got an NCE wireless, and I've got 3 boosters. For it's probably too much, but I wanted 4 different sections of my layout. Which one is the staging, the other one is autumn and winter, and then spring and summer. Yeah, NCE I was told was the easiest. So like I said, when it comes to electronics or electricity, forget it. So I haven't had any problems with NCE yet. Everything seems to be going great, except my connection to GMRI. I still have a little problem there, but I'm not ready yet to start programming with GMRI. There's still too much to do.
No, NCE is known in Australia as probably one of the it's probably the most common DCC system out there, because it is so user friendly and easy to use.
But I do intend to have people come in with their cell phones or whatever to use once, I guess, GMRI is going to be running.
Well, you could always get a Raspberry Pi and set that up to run JMRI. I know someone that could point you in that direction there. So
yeah, I'm waiting for it.
There was another question here from Andy Ambrose, and I think Andy was actually the first person to join our stream this evening, so he's been there a while. And he was asking what sound decoder was in the Loco with the camera.
You're asking me?
I'm asking you, yeah. So what sound decoders do you use, or?
I'm not there yet.
He's not there yet.
No, I've got about 20 locomotives right now, and they're all set to. I programmed them for just a number. I haven't done anything else yet. I intend to use GMRI to program all my locomotives, like the speed and the matching and all that stuff. But no, I'm not there yet.
Well, I could imagine if you model Canadian Pacific, I'd say you probably have a fair few Rapido trains because they're one of the most popular Canadian outline modelers, aren't they?
Yeah, I've got Atlas, Bowser, and Rapido. Those are probably the ones I have.
Okay, yeah, because Rapido, I think, put lock sound decoders in their locos, if I remember rightly. So yeah, so you've probably got a smattering of different brands from the different manufacturers, but yeah. Let me have a little look if there was any other. Okay, what brand of turnouts do you use, and are they powered, and if so, how?
Okay, my tracks are all Atlas 100, and my turnouts are all Picos. Are they powered? Not to make them turn, to make them switch. No, they're just powered in the sense that there's power to the track. All my tracks, every piece of track has been wired so that there's no, I don't want my trains to stop. So I remember when I first started, I was buy turnouts, and I made a mistake of buying Insulfrog, and the other one, which is Electrofrog. And at one point I was getting shorts and I didn't know why. I go, well, a turnout is a turnout, no. So I had to do corrections on the, which one was it?
The Electrofrogs, you would have had to cut the track.
Yeah, I had to cut, yeah, exactly. So I'm dabbing a bit in electronics with Arduino, but you know, if I can wait, like I still have some wiring to do under my tracks.
Well, look, I've told you, Lloyd, there's no problem. If you buy me the bus fare to get out to your place, I'll give you a hand with your wiring. There's never been an issue with that. But you say you're dabbling with Arduinos. You've made a few very handy projects out of Arduinos, and as you said, you're an electronics a newbie, so it's not something that you've done in the past. So it's all a learning curve. But didn't you make a speedometer that had a digital display and gave you all sorts of information, how hot the water was in the passenger car as it went past, and a few other things?
Yes, I did. But that was with the help of a few people. I didn't want to spend, I think it was $100 Canadian for a speedometer. And somebody said, well, you could build one for $15, $15. I said, really? Okay, so let me get the parts. And I put 2 sensors under the tracks. And when the train went by, said what kind of speed it was going at. But the biggest project I've done was a weigh station. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes.
The weigh station, I had, the first weigh station I did was a set of track that would weigh the car. And what happened is I found out with time that some cars are bigger than the others. So when I was weighing 2 small cars, well, the wheels of the second car was on the weighing scale. So what I did is I built the scale so that it would weigh the front wheels, and then it would weigh the back wheels and add it up and get the weight of the car.
The total weight, yep.
Yeah. So what I did, it wasn't just a luck of the number. It was really the weight of the car. I had a formula and that would calculate, okay, this car weighs so many ounces, multiplied by, it was a number, and it would give me, let's say, 450,000 pounds. So, and when you look at the car, you've got the empty weight and maximum weight. So if it said, let's say, 80,000 pounds, I knew it was an empty car. And if I added more weight to it, then it would go up to, let's say, 400,000 pounds. That was the full weight. But then I realized that I would have to adjust all the weights, all my cars with weights, and I've got about 250 cars. And I said, but it really did work. It really weighed the cars.
So there you go. Someone who, like you said, has limited electronics knowledge has been able to pick up some Arduino bits and make a speedometer and make a weighbridge for their layout. Actually, it's given me an idea now for my HO vehicles, remote control vehicles. We might make a weighbridge somewhere so that we can check the container weights as they leave the yard.
I don't know. Just to finish with my brewery, which is going to measure 8 feet by 8 feet, the 6 doors going into the building. The operator is going to have a switch. He flips the switch. There's a red light by the door. When the door starts going up, there's a sound that warns the people inside that the train is coming in. Once the door is completely up, the sound stops and the light turns green, telling the operator, okay, you can go into that building.
The attention to detail you put into some of the stuff is amazing, Lloyd. Anyway, have you got any more comments there in the chat?
No more comments there, but based on an 8 foot by 8 foot brewery, as long as it's delivering cold beer, it sounds awfully good to me. So, like Martin said, the attention to detail you put into the layout is quite amazing. And thanks again for sharing it with us all.
It's a pleasure.
Now, I understand you've got an announcement. You're doing another chat on Monday night, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I'm redoing this one, but no voice on the video, and I'm doing it in French for the French people in Quebec.
Oh, well, there you go.
And also, I might as well put a plug. Every second Saturday, just happens that it's almost the same time as the NMRAX. Every second Saturday night at 9 o'clock, we have a group called Model Railroading Live, and we're doing 10 episodes on railroad empires, how we build them. In other words, we're not telling people how to build them. It's just how I built mine and the 3 other people, how they build theirs, going from bench work all the way to scenery.
And it's a show worth watching. I've watched quite a few of those. So yeah, Saturday night, isn't it? 9 o'clock.
Yes, there's one tonight. It's episode 3 tonight. We're talking about sub-road bed and road bed.
Beautiful. Well, thanks again, Lloyd, and we'll definitely get you back on to have a look at some of the interiors of your buildings as you've put them together, and copious other subjects that have come up in the chat. So if you'd like, you can go off onto either Facebook or YouTube, and there's a heap of people in there, I think, that have got questions for you that you could answer online. Either that, or I know it's early in the morning and we got you out of bed, so you could go back and have another kip.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lloyd.
My pleasure.